on the tour. Our guest today, she's a former WTA player and she's still involved in the tennis scene. Jaslyn Hewitt Shehadie, how are we?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you. So, wanted to hear more about your experience retiring. I guess being from such a big tennis family and with them still involved, did that make your decision harder to leave the game?
For me, my decision to stop playing tennis was quite easy actually because I broke my hand. So when an injury stops you from playing tennis quite suddenly, it definitely uh, takes the choice out of it for you. So I tried to make a comeback after having hand surgery once, got a plate and 5 screws put in my hand. The actual vibration of making contact with the ball still hurt at the time. 6 months later, I had the plate taken out and tried to make another recovery with it or back on the court, but unfortunately, no, my hand was still no good. So it basically made the decision easy for me that it was time to hang up the rackets and move on.
Yeah. So that's like sometimes more frustrating that the decision's taken out of your hands. Was there any like time thereafter, years later, that you're like, oh, maybe I'll have a comeback?
It's always tough during the Australian Open time, especially the few years after you do give up, knowing that you always went through the juniors there as a family. We went to the Australian Open since we were about 6 years old. So for me, I had fond memories of the Aussie Open and tennis and the tennis family there. Um, but on the second thought, I did have a brother, Leighton. So with Leighton doing so well and my ranking at about 300, I knew the difference between playing pro circuits and playing the main tour. So for me, it was an easier realization of the level and expectation to be a top 100, top 50 world number one player versus the pro circuit challenger level player that you're grinding week in, week out. So at the age of 21, I was still playing pro circuits. At the age of 16, Leighton was top 100 in the world. So for me, it gave me a good realization of actually how hard being a tennis player is and the challenges to actually make a good living out of it.
You're now a mum of two. Is it harder, the challenger circuit or being a mum?
Both have their different challenges and different qualities. So I always loved traveling the world and with your tennis mates, and I always call it a tennis family. I think if your mates on tour, your competitors and your rivals back in the day, but as you grow older, I've got Nicole Criz on the court behind us, and we still joke about our rivalry in juniors and growing up. Being a mum now, though, it's trying to find that work-life balance to get them to be the best that they can possibly be, and me to can still continue my passion and career.
Yeah. I'm always interested as well for past players that have got kids now, whether they would get their kids into tennis at such a high level. For some, they just don't even want a bar of it. Where do you sit?
No, definitely. If my sons, they have lessons, I started them with lessons with a private coach here, Paul McNamara in Sydney. So I got someone else to coach them and have a fun time with them on the tennis court. They'll play once a week. I may have a hit with them occasionally if I have time, and then they'll try to play a competition. But again, my boys are only 6 and 8. If they do choose to go the tennis pathway, I'll definitely support them. I think I have such fond memories growing up playing tennis, traveling the world. Everything about it I loved and I still love. Hence why I'm still in the sport to this day. So I would definitely push my children in the tennis pathway should they be good enough. I mean, I'm very realistic. I'm very tough on them with knowing what the level is for any sport. So they're currently more enjoying soccer than tennis at the moment, but I still have them have tennis lessons once a week at least. So it's finding that right balance for your son or daughter and finding if they love the sport. And if they love the sport, then no, I'll definitely let them have a crack at it.
Yeah. You as well, Jazz, you're a commentator, you're still working in the tennis scene with Tennis New South Wales. When you did stop playing, was there any idea of what you wanted to do after you're playing?
Yeah, so for me, I actually didn't finish school. So I was halfway through year 11, went on a Tennis Australia tour for 2.5 months and couldn't keep up. So then I moved to the AIS, and we didn't get pushed as hard to stay in our studies as much back then as we do to our players now. So like it or hate it, it's probably one regret that I have that I didn't finish school. So ideally, I would have liked to go down the physiotherapy side of things. As soon as I stopped playing tennis, I did study remedial massage, studied personal training. I had a year off. I didn't pick up a tennis racket. And I basically fell into coaching. I walked into Tennis SA and just thought, I'll donate my time and hit for the next generation of players. And turns out there was a fitness, strength and conditioning coach position available, and I just finished my personal training qualification. So I doubled up as a tennis coach, hitter, as well as the strength and conditioning coach for the High Performance Academy back in South Australia. So it wasn't something that I had planned. However, I think life has its own journey, and here I am today.
Yeah. And I mean, you could probably speak as a fellow parent, but you're now working with Tennis New South Wales as a development manager. Have you got any advice for parents who want to get their kid into tennis and to sort of nurture that development pathway?
Yeah, I think the main key is to find a good qualified coach, someone that your son or daughter has a good relationship and rapport with. They may not be high performance qualified, they may not be the best former player, but there's some really good coaches out there that are engaging, have high energy level for the players. And I think if you're starting off at a young age, it's really good for the players to love it and build that relationship with their coach. If they have a couple of peers or mates or brothers and sisters playing as well, that also helps. But I think finding a good coach to begin with is definitely key.
Jazz, it's awesome to catch up with you and see what you've been up to beyond the tour. Thanks so much for your time today.
No worries. Thanks.